So earlier this week, we saw the largest announcement of banned cards that Flesh and Blood has ever seen. And along with that announcement was exactly what we've come to expect, but still very much appreciate from Legend Story Studios. A well-written, transparent, and forward-looking explanation and justification, sharing both their reasoning and their future vision. And by and large, overall community reception is that this has been a net positive. And while I tend to agree on a high level, so much of the focus these last few days has been on the list of cards, and I think there are some parts of this announcement that are being overlooked. So today I want to discuss this most recent B&S, but not in terms of how each hero is affected or how it impacts the meta. Rather, I want to look at the larger picture of the changes, what was said, and in most cases, what actually wasn't said. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando, and go again, a fabulous cast, and thanks so much for tuning in here on your Destiny Friday as we are talking what I believe will become known as the Great Book Burning Ban of 2024. Now, this is a pretty significant inflection point, I think, for the game and the future of the game, and it's a welcome one. And you know, it's no secret that this article has been out for a couple days. So what we're doing tonight, we are not going through and reading parts of the article. We're not talking about hot takes and meta impacts. That's not what we're doing. I also do want to acknowledge that I realize that 3 hours after this will go live is the start of the world premiere, and we're going to get just a dump truck load of spoilers. So go enjoy that, do that thing, do your theory crafting, but then come back, watch this, because I think there's valuable discussion that we're going to have today. Well, it's obviously why we're shooting this, right? So part of the reason that I took a delay in getting this up, and I did want to thank everyone who asked me when it was coming, that really made me feel good. Actually, I really appreciate that. But I really wanted to wait a little bit for kind of the euphoria around this to settle. Because I believe it's important to have, at least in a less volatile manner, an honest conversation about what I see as the greater implications of what was said in this article, and also perhaps of greater concern to me is what was not said, which I believe some needs to be, and hopefully we can get some insight into that in the future. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, this article was nothing short of amazing. And I do think it says a lot that we continue to see this level of self-reflection and openness from James and the rest of his team. I loved hearing their vision, but there were also a lot of things in this that I'd hoped we hear that we didn't. And what's missing from the article is actually somewhat concerning to me. So yes, today we're going to talk all sorts of things, and they are very much entwined and related. And you can see the thing over there. I will also be doing timestamps below, so you can skip ahead, because I realize, you know, kids don't want to watch a super long video anymore. I get it. But I do think that a lot of these things are related to kind of my ultimate conclusion. So first, let's start just with the overall summary in case you've been living in a box. But we saw significant bannings in Classic Constructed and Blitz. So we saw Art of War, Bonds of Ancestry, right? That one sits above the rest or sits outside the Venn diagram of the other ones. We saw Cash-In, Orion, Tome of Etherwind, Tome of Divinity, Tome of Fyendal, and Tome of Firebrand. All banned in Blitz and in Classic Constructed. So what you very much see here is we see a bunch of cards who've been in the game since the beginning. So Tome of Fyendal was in WTR, Art of War was in Arc, and then Cash-In and Tome of Aetherwind were both in Crew. You can see I screwed it up there. I originally thought it was in Arc, but it was actually in Crew. So, but functionally, I see these as being in the game since the functional beginning, right? Their first block, or so to say, and that was basically headed into the pandemic, and it really has set the stage. Those three sets are the functional. I see them as the functional beginning of the game, right? Whether they all came out at different times, I get it, but they really set the stage for that. So you're looking at cards that have been in the game for a long time and have functionally set the stage in the game for a long time. Now, something to be clear on is that doesn't mean that cards can't be banned, right? We've seen it before with like Drone to Brutality and stuff like that, when cards just functionally break the intent of the game. We've seen it in many, many, many other games like Magic the Gathering's Power 9 or the Reserve List and all that other stuff of cards that will never be, it's mostly the Power 9, right, that you can't play basically in many formats. Some you can play, but in many, you get my point, right? It's not unprecedented to ban an OG card when it's deemed design restrictive or just too powerful or something like that. So that is not where we're going here, but you do need to keep in mind for the context of this conversation that they've always been there, right? Which means that they've always been there as something that needed to be designed around. Okay. Now, the perception of much of this, and much of the discussion goes around what we're calling card advantage, which is being able to get plus cards in your hand, right? So this is being construed by many in the community to say, oh, this was a ban on card draw. And that's not entirely true. It's really net positive card draw is the way to think of it. So Tome of Fyendal, draw 2 cards. You have to have action points to do that, but it's become easier to do that. So you can kind of go wide. And it's also not just card advantage itself. It's also, my words, not his, explosive card advantage where you could cash in into another cash in, into another cash in potentially. And then all of a sudden it's +1, +1, +1. And that takes a lot of the agencies, the word that was used, out of the opponent. So you have Tome of Fyendal, Tome of Weatherwind, cash in, very similar cards such as that. Orion's pretty gross in the right situations and all sorts of stuff like that. And like I mentioned, this has been associated with card draw, but that's not entirely true, right? Because if you go look at a card like we have across the screen right now, Gorganian Tome, you're still only sitting essentially at where your hand was, right? So you're actually not getting net card advantage from Gorganian Tome. All you're really doing is either setting up free Kassai swings or making an embodiment of lightning or whatever it may be in that specific case, right, by playing that card. Now, it does help with card cycling, but in terms of net card advantage, it doesn't. And that's why Gorganian Tome, in my opinion, was left alone on this. We also have a card, Tome of Harvest. Now, Tome of Harvest does give you a net 1, kind of, because it costs you an arsenal slot. But also on this card, because it requires the arsenal to be played, you can't Tome of Harvest into Tome of Harvest, right? So that's why, again, in my opinion, this card has been left alone, is you're not really, first off, you're not really getting overall that much card advantage. Second off, you can't just go off on it, okay? So if we come back to these, right, it's really not so much just about the raw card draw, it's about that explosive potential, okay? Now, you may have noticed that, and I think it's fair to say Art of War is the poster child for a lot of this discussion, for this B&S, probably is the main poster child. I know my Kano folks out there worried about their tome, which does affect their pitch stacking pretty significantly. But Art of War is almost certainly kind of the poster child for this discussion. So let's actually look at Art of War in terms of net card advantage. So it costs 1, so you have to pitch to it. Okay, fair enough. And then you are playing Art of War from hand and banishing another card, and I'm talking on the card draw ability here. So it trades 2 for 2. So Art of War isn't actually giving you net card advantage, which is very interesting, right? So then why Art of War? What's wrong with that? Well, the +1 is really the issue here because think about it. What are you getting? You're getting you have to pay the 1 resource for effectively an unlimited +1 on every attack, right? So that's really what you're getting, and it backfills itself. So while you're not getting net card advantage, you kind of are with the +1. And then, of course, you have the explosivity of that, of how many times have you sat across the table, or maybe you've done it to someone else yourself, Art of War into Art of War. It happens, you get it, right? Go wide for 5 with +2 on everything or whatever it may be, right? So that is how Art of War fits into this, even though it's net neutral, unless, of course, you're chucking a Slithering Pede or something like that, in which case, rock on Levia, okay? So next up here is Bonds of Ancestry, and then I want to talk to a lesser extent Descendant. So Bonds of Ancestry has seen its thing, right? It's been majesticized, right, already by taking the yellow and the blue away. Of course, it is now gone with this ban. But Bonds in itself, it provides card advantage, right? So that's part of this as well. That said, I don't actually know that Bonds was the correct target on this. Well, I think Bonds was the correct thing to do with the way that things are now. However, I do want to point out, I think actually a lot of the problem statement here was actually Descendant Gustwave, having natural go again. What I'll put across the screen now is kind of my proposal. This could have very easily said, if Surging Strike was a last attack, this has +2 and gains go again, and then kill the natural go again. And what this would have done was forced it to be used with the Surging Strike combo, or with the Surging Strike line, and not being able to bounce Gust Wave, Bonds, Gust Wave, but right, not being able to do the bounce thing, right? So I actually think if you're going to look at the design mistake, right, and I use it with air quotes, right, because things happen. But if you're going to look at the design mistake, Bonds wasn't actually the problem. I think Descendant Gust Wave was the problem, right? Now, what we'll eventually see, I'm sure, is some sort of, Bonds effective reprint that'll allow Dishonor to work, but it'll take a couple sets to get there, but it'll eventually come, Ninja folks, and I'm pretty confident. So with what we just talked about in context of how the signpost of the problem isn't necessarily the root cause of the problem, I now really want to go into throw tomatoes at the screen territory. The problem with Zen wasn't Art of War. The problem with Zen wasn't Bonds. It's the whole package with Zen. Okay, so Zen himself has just an incredibly amazing ability, right? Being able to tutor and create the combo piece for the tutor. That's pretty crazy good, right, in of itself. So, in my opinion, none of this, being the B&S, changed what was wrong with Zen, nor addressed where the design philosophy miss was that led to Zen. And what I mean by that is, let's look at this incredible package. Now, of course, the one that has taken the most flack out of all this is Traverse, being able to tutor out a blue, which then effectively, when you pitch it to Zen, tutors out whatever cards you need plus the Tiger to make it work. I mean, that is crazy, crazy, crazy good. But Traverse would not be a problem if you didn't have the carded. I mean, Traverse gives you not just a chi in hand, it gives you the combo piece that you need. Yes, not in hand, but effectively card advantage for it, if we want to use the term. Strider Reprisal, we all know how that works with 8 Art of War. So then we can ask ourselves, Stride was a problem being able to give Art of War the free card, right? So if Zen had to banish, like everybody else, if he had to banish a real card in order to make Art of War work, would Zen be where he is? So I don't know that you can entirely blame Art of War. And then I want to say, and again, tomatoes at the screen, have people actually looked at 12 Petal Kassai? The fact that it gives you a free resource when you transcend, right? So let's think about that. So you do something, you get an effect from it, then it transcends to go back in your hand to do a 3 resources into Zen. You then have the 1 resource from 12 Petal to be able to pay for a 1-drop. So it lets Zen on those turns go get a 1-drop. This entire package is absolutely crazy good, right? So is it any one thing here? I think it's not. I think it's the whole package. And then that really begs kind of another question, or the ultimate question of, how did we get here? And I promise I'm going to link this back to the B&S. I promise you, right? But what I want to do is I actually want to talk about Starvo, which is, has been well admitted even by James in various interviews and stuff like that, that he just wasn't, they were not in an optimum place for Starvo, I mean. They were not in an optimum place for playtesting. They were trying to playtest this hero in a new way because they were all locked down in COVID. He didn't get the reps he needed. They didn't get effective playtesting because of it. It's been widely accepted that was not accepted. It's been widely said that is what happened. And by and large, I think the community at large has given them a pass for that. It doesn't mean people weren't upset at the time, but retroactively, I think the vast majority of people have given them a pass for that. As you know what, we understand we were all in hard times there. Thank you for continuing to do what you did and keep the game alive. We'll give you a pass on Starvo. He's gone. Let's move on. By and large, that was how it worked with the community. But then we move forward to Zen, who, if we're being on it, now to be fair, LL wasn't a format back then, but it's to be fair, I don't know that Starvo would have, in a vacuum, if Starvo was legal in Blitz, I don't know that he would have dominated because Viserai was so good coming out of Everfest, but he still would have been very good in Blitz. Let's be very clear, right? Actually, probably would have been better because it would have been easier for him to, right? Well, no, because he would have only had 1. Yeah, he would have had 1, so it would have been easier for him to find his double fuse cards, actually, right, in Blitz, probably. Okay, but anyway, let's move on to Zen here, right? Zen is very easily Blitz best. Whether he's the best or not in LL, you all kids can debate that, but he's damn good in it. And he's the BDIF in CC, right? So I would say that Zen is functionally in the same bucket as Bravo. The exception being, and this is where I would like a little bit of clarification, is really what happened with Zen, because we don't have the same excuses. There's not the same root cause reasoning as Bravo in terms of not effective playtesting and stuff like that. Now, There's a slight caveat on that. We've been told that Zen joined the party a little late in terms of testing. So, late insertions, as they're called, is not exactly a new thing, right? There was actually a very big thing very recently in the Magic Gathering world about late insertions of a commander hero. I don't know which one, whatever, but you can let me know in the comments. But late insertions are not a unique thing. It definitely happens. Where I would challenge, though, and where I would hope that this improves in the future, right, and where I would like them to tell us how it's going to improve in the future, is maybe heroes shouldn't be the late insertion in the process, right? I get it, things have to change. But something that's so functional and pivotal to a play style probably shouldn't be the thing that is being untested, right? Because it's a lot easier to just go kill a piece of equipment or kill a card. Killing a whole hero, the only way to do that is nerf everything around them, which then has massive amount of collateral damage, right, to other heroes or to other playstyles. Or now you have to go back in time, like we're doing today, and address existing problems that functionally made your new hero have problems. Okay, so that is, where I really think we need to think about challenging these late insertions overall, right? So now let's go to, I'll bring you back home. What I was really hoping to see in this article was not, again, everything in there was phenomenal, and I appreciate it. But I really would have liked to see what we learned from Zen. And did we learn from Zen, or did we just blame the past? Because it is very easy to look at what's happening now as going back to things that have always been there and saying, you know what, these cards are too design restrictive, or they don't functionally match the tenets of the game. And all of that is completely valid. If it doesn't match what you want the vision to be, fix it, applaud it. Thank you. But what I still need, I don't need, right? But what I think would be valuable, whether you tell us or not, right? I think it would be valuable for LSS to really, I just hope they're really evaluating what went wrong in this particular case. Because to come back and be like, well, the reason, once we kill all these cards that already existed, then Zen will be fine. That's not great approach to game design, right? Now, if you've put pieces in before that make it a challenge with which to do balanced game design, then go kill them. That's the right thing to do, and I believe that's what they're doing here. But you still have to ask yourself, how did we allow ourselves to create an interaction with a piece that is not only, the bonds thing, edge case, maybe it got missed, fair enough, right? But if you're thinking Art of War is a problem with Zen, because he can go super wide, that card was there from the beginning, right? So that's why I want to come back here to this continual learning thing. And James actually speaks to this, and I absolutely applaud this. Continual learning and improvement are one of my personal lifelong disciplines and a core internal value of my company. I applaud that, and that is amazing and awesome. So that's why I'm hoping, right? And that's why when we're talking about this, I'm not saying, you didn't tell us your solution. First off, they don't have to. They don't have to tell us their solution. They don't have to tell us if they even think it's a problem. But I do have faith that this is happening. And with the transparency that they've always brought, I was hoping to at least get a little insight into that. Because one thing that we still haven't really seen an admission that Zen was a mistake. We've seen statements about how we acknowledge that he's strong and we're going to do something about it. But I think it's clear that some mistakes, or maybe mistake is too strong of a word, but I think it's very clear that something was missed along the way. And going back and just blowing out the existing cards, even if that's the right thing to do, doesn't fix that problem, or it doesn't give a fixed, it doesn't prevent it from happening again, right? And that's really where I want to lead us to, is how do we prevent the next mistake? So what I have on here is the absent AAR, and AAR stands for after action review. It's something that many companies, regardless of industry, do when something goes wrong. Either somebody gets hurt, or they have, a large quality excursion or something like that. They'll pull everybody in a room and they'll say, all right, we're going to go through this after action review. What happened and how can we make sure it never happens again? And that is what I really hope is happening at Legend Story Studios, is to say, all right, where did we go wrong and how can we prevent it from happening again? The pitfall in this case, where at least as it is presented now, of saying, all right, all of these old cards really made it a problem, is you're not forward looking on how to fix that mistake. You're just saying, well, we were given a bad hand. Let's go fix the bad hand, right? So it is not clear at this point, at least from what we've been told, how or if we're going to avoid something like this in the future. Okay. So again, I want to be clear. If something is design limiting, it should go. But at what point then does the design team take accountability for not designing around that existing thing, right? And in the case of Art of War, let's come back to that, right? If what we're agreeing on is that it doesn't provide card advantage, therefore the problem with Art of War is the +1 portion of it and not the actual card draw, right? Because we've seen it's card draw net neutral, so it must actually be the +1 that's the problem. Are we asking ourselves, right? Are the designers asking themselves, was the game designed to go wider than 4 to 5, right? For that, I mean, it's very standard for like a 1-3, right? Or even a 0-3, depending on the case, right? Very standard for a card to be worth that 3, maybe even 4, depending on what it is. So is Art of War a problem if we only have 3 to 4 links? Or is Art of War a problem if we have 9 links or whatever it may be, where that starts to compound and you get crazy value out of it? So then, okay, we've removed Art of War, but do we just run into this problem again because what we're doing is ignoring the fact that, or not ignore, but we're dismissing the fact that Art of War was only a problem when it broke one of the design tenets, right? So Art of War itself didn't break a design tenet, but the effect of it did under certain conditions. So you're removing it and continuing with said conditions. I do think it's fair to say that there's a potential risk there, right? So I think it's very important to evaluate this from all contexts in terms of what happened, what went wrong, and being fair to not only yourself, but the situation about what happened. I mean, it is what all of us are expected to do in our lives about how did my credit card bill get this big, or whatever it may be for you personally. You do the same thing. You go back and you're like, all right, here's where I screwed up. Here's how I'm not going to do it again. Right. And I think going back and having that in this case would be very valuable. And that is what I was hoping to see more of in the article, because they've always done it in the past. So as we move to close this out, I want to make sure that we do so with an absolute air of positivity. I could not be more excited about the future, right? With what they've told us. And again, the level of engagement and care that they have, not just for their game, but for their players. We've got a new set coming out, a new meta to come out, new problems to go solve. And we really have an exciting time of Flesh and Blood all the way through the end of the year, and then it'll be January, and then we're just going to repeat this whole thing over. And it is super exciting, right? So the comments I've made above about, there was a problem, what are you going to do to fix it? Tell us how. First off, they don't have to tell us how. But I feel that saying this, right, and pointing out that there's maybe some misses in the logic of just saying, well, our new design didn't work because of the old design, so let's get rid of the old design. Maybe that is the way to go. But I still think it should provide a checkpoint for learning and future development so that we just make this game better that we all love. LSS, us as players, all of us collectively want to see it succeed, right? So I think it's fair to ask those questions. And of course, with all the love I have for LSS, thank you very much for continuing to do activities like this, whether it be in an article or behind closed doors or whatnot. Thank you all for watching. Love you all, and go Commando.